Hello and welcome to our lecture on cookies and sessions. So cookies and sessions are highly related, but I think probably the most important part of this lecture is to understand the difference between cookies and sessions. Cookies are a part of the HTTP protocol. It is a relationship between the browser and any server. Cookies are a browser feature that then servers take advantage of to implement sessions. So sessions are data stored generally inside the server and sort of unlocked by a cookie. So we're going to look at each of these separately, just keep them separate. So like I said, cookies are an HTTP thing, and so it is basically a way for a script on the server to store a little bit of data in a browser. So there's this little database sitting there, and we'll see that database in a second. And it can store data in there, and then when new requests come in, the cookies come in with it, okay? And so it's like a temporary or semi-permanent storage on the browser that can be written by the server. And this is the way that, I mean, we just assume this now, that somehow the servers know my browser on my laptop versus your browser running on your iPhone or whatever. But that wasn't always the case, right? These browsers originally were all kind of anonymous. They were all the same. And they would ask for documents, and the servers would show the documents in the most basic form. But things like logging in and logging out and having access to your email on yours and mine on mine, that was something we kind of had to invent, because the early days really were stateless, meaning that every browser was treated the same. There was no way to mark a particular browser. But that didn't last very long at all. And so cookies are this idea of scribbling a little mark, a little sort of a breadcrumb, as it were. So your browser gets one, my browser gets another one, and somehow the server now knows the 40 or 2,000 or 100,000 browsers it's working with by putting a little different mark on each one of them as it encounters them. And so cookies are different than sessions, and cookies are different than logging in. Although cookies are used for sessions and cookies are used for logging in, they are just part of the request response cycle. Cookies don't force their way into the server, but we use cookies. So the way it often works on many sites is you have a cookie the first moment that you have a web page, hit a web page. And you'll notice there's some EU laws that basically say you have to have a little top part that says, our site uses cookies. And they're saying that because they want to store data in your browser, and EU has basically said that you have to ask permission, which is probably a good idea. And so the browser comes for the first time to a website, notices that it has no cookies on this browser, and then wants to send a page back that marks that browser with a cookie and potentially ask permission to do so. And then once the permission is granted, then the cookie is sent. But then, so that's the first page, or the first or second page. And then from that point on, every time that browser requests a page from that same server, it includes those cookies. There can be more than one of those cookies. And so it's like, hello, here's your number, here's your serial number, dear browser, and please send me the serial number on all successive requests once the user has given permission. And so they're siloed by web address, and so you don't send a cookie from the bank site to your learning management system, and you don't send your learning management system cookies to your social media. They have an expiration date. There is such a thing as a session cookie, which only lasts as long as the browser is open, and then they sort of are flushed out, and others are written to the permanent storage, like the disk of your computer. And then that's why sometimes things know that you're logged in, days later after you've shut your computer down and shut your browser down, and then you come back. And so some of them are they all have expiration dates. Some of them have, expiration dates well over a year. And some of them have expiration dates as soon as you close the browser, they're gone. And that's why you have to log back in. And again, cookies and login aren't the same thing, but cookies are how login is kind of unlocked. Okay? PHP, of course, does a superb job of cookies. We'll talk about with sessions and other things, but right now we're talking about cookies. There is a set cookie function, and there is a super global called $_cookies that is like $_post or $_get. And so this is the simple thing. The cookie processing is handled by PHP, and again, before the first line of your code runs, the cookies are pulled and extracted into a key value pair. Cookies are key value pairs. When you set the cookie, you have to set the key and the value and an expiration time. And so here I'm saying, is there a cookie named Zap sitting in the browser? If there is not, here we're processing a request, right? We've got a GET request or a POST request. Did that POST request include a cookie from the browser? If it didn't, then we're going to send a cookie back on the response, and then we're going to see that. And we're going to say, and this is like saying Zap equals 42, and then sending that out to the browser. So it's like they're an associative array or a dictionary of cookies or whatever. And there's limits on how many cookies you can have and how big they can be. And as long as you're reasonable, you're not going to get into trouble. But you can't send, 100,000 characters. There's other mechanisms in browsers that allow larger amounts of storage. Cookies have a significant, because they're used so much, they put reasonable limits on them. Okay? And so here is the first time that we have hit this. You can go hit this and and then look in your browser console and look at the response header. Okay, so this set cookie is part of the response, and it says basically Zap equals 42, and so this is the response of that particular program. This particular program that says, oh, I have to run this code, this set cookie code, and so it sends the set cookie header. Now, you can't have any output before the set cookie, and anything that has to do with headers, and we'll talk about a couple things that use headers, you got to send them first, which is fine because in my sort of model view controller world, I have this part of the code that's the top part of the code and then the bottom part of the code, and this is always silent, so you can do things like headers in it. You could not send the cookie down here. You can't. Once you've sent that first actual character of text to the page, you can't send cookies anymore. So you have to actually open the incognito browser or a brand new browser and then go to this URL and look immediately at the response that you get, and then you'll see the set cookie. Because you're never going to see it again because it only detects it once, because then you can look at the cookies in your browser, and you look in Chrome, you look under applications and then cookies, and then you see the cookies and you see, oh, Zap is 42. Excellent. So that is where it's stored. Now, in the earlier days of these consoles, you could change this value. You can still change it, but I think they made it harder to change it or something. It was so fun to just change cookies. Mostly what you can do when you change cookies. So you have to assume that they're user data on the user's computer, so you can't trust them. We do have things that actually sign cookies securely, so if you alter them, at least we know they're altered, and so there are signed cookies that the server signs. It doesn't stop the user from altering the data, but it does allow the server to say, looks like you've been altering your cookie data, and I'll just throw that away. Okay, and so you can take a look at the cookies after that first request response cycle, and you see the cookies, and then what you see is every request response cycle, the first thing you're going to see is that, there is a cookie here, right? Zap42, this was from $_cookies, and you will see that in the request headers, because there are request headers and response headers. Request headers are get and then a bunch of headers, and then and that's how it works. Response are header, 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 blank, content, right? And so you can hit this refresh as many times as you want, and you will see that it sends that cookie, because that's the job of the browser. It has received a cookie, and now on every request it must send a cookie. So you can see how useful this might be. It's our way of the Zap equals, we've chosen the name Zap, but 42 is the mark that we've put on this particular browser. Now, everyone gets 42, but that's okay. Okay, and so if we look at this sort of as a picture, right, the browser comes in, there is no cookie on it, and so then we use call set cookie once, and we send back a cookie, and then that cookie stays in the browser forever until we throw it away, or if it's a session cookie, and then every request from that point forward, the cookie shows up and ends up in the variable $cookie. Okay? So that's kind of how it works in PHP. Of course, you can clear them, closing the browser might, time expiring. Eventually, and the user owns this data, they can throw it away anytime they want. I mean, you can go into your developer console and wipe out that cookie. And if you wipe out the cookie in developer console, then you hit the refresh again, then it's going to send you a new cookie. It'll send it back to Zap42. So that's sort of a quick understanding of cookie. Up next, we're going to talk about PHP sessions.